Yes, Your Honor. May we have permission to approach opposing counsel, approach the witness, and move about the courtroom freely?
You have permission to move freely to approach opposing counsel. If you're going to approach a witness, you need to ask permission.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Anything else?
I'd like to introduce the counsel for the
Yes.
plaintiff. My name is Counsel Lush. This is Counsel Myers. This is Counsel Fox.
Okay. Thank you. Anything else?
And we would like to read the stipulations that were agreed upon by both parties.
You would like to, would you vote with them?
Introduce the stipulations
Yes.
made by both parties beforehand. First, Max Jeffries is now in a coma, and his chances of recovery are unknown. 2, Max Jeffries was 16 years old on January 2nd, 2005. 3, this trial has been bifurcated by mutual agreement. No determinations of damages will be made in this hearing. 4, Jamie Company shot Max Jeffries on January 2nd, 2005. 5, the transcript of the deposition of Jamie Conley is authentic. All other objections apply as preserved during the deposition or otherwise preserved at law. 6, all criminal record reports are authentic. All other objections apply.
Okay. Any objection, counsel?
Objections, Your Honor.
Anything else? Okay. Anything from defense?
Same question as the plaintiff, in terms of moving around the well of the court and approaching
Applies to
witness.
everyone. Yep.
At this time, I'd also like to introduce the counsel for the defense. My name is Benjamin Kessler. Second out to Fancy. This is Sarah.
Could you also introduce your witnesses, please? For the defense and that
The
plaintiff.
witnesses for the defense are Trinidad Martinez, crime scene investigator, Anthony Smith, and Patrick Cross.
Okay. And plaintiff's.
Our witnesses are Sergeant Sam Sachs, Officer Corey Drake, and Dr. Dana Haskins.
Okay. Anything else before we begin? Okay. I'll hear opening statement from plaintiff.
Permission to proceed.
Go ahead.
On January 2nd, 2005, when most of us were at home saying goodbye to our loved ones and preparing to get back in the full swing of things after the holiday season, Max Jeffries' parents were sitting in a waiting room in the hospital. Their son was fighting for his life after being shot by Jamie Conley, a member of the Polk County Police Department. But take a look around. You won't see Officer Conley in this courtroom. You see, shortly after the shooting, he took his own life. No doubt the guilt of his actions was simply too much for him to bear. However, Officer Conley was not solely responsible for the shooting that took place. In fact, if a more powerful authority had intervened as they were supposed to, we wouldn't be here right now. You see, Officer Conley was not of sound mind. In fact, the reason why Max Jeffries lies in a hospital bed is because of the Polk County Police Department. Officer Conley, at the time of the shooting, was not of sound mind, and they were aware of this, and yet they did nothing. He showed symptoms of post-traumatic stress disorder, and yet the police department did nothing. He had three reports filed against him for police misconduct, and according to the police department's policy, he should have been suspended, and yet he wasn't. Instead, the police department felt it was permissible for him to go about town with a gun strapped to his waist. You see, the Polk County Police Department was playing a game of Russian roulette, and unfortunately, Max Jeffries is the person who lost. Today, you're going to hear evidence and testimony from Sam Sachs, the head of the Internal Affairs Division, who will testify to the fact that the Polk County Police Department frequently denied requests for him to investigate actions of police misconduct. You're going to hear from Corey Drake, an officer who can attest to the fact that many issues of police misconduct within the Polk County Police Department were simply brushed under the rug. And you're going to hear from Dana Haskins, the psychologist who treated Officer Conley and had intimate details into the many demons with which he was battling at the time of the shooting. The defense is going to try and paint Max Jeffries, a 16-year-old boy, as a gun-toting thug, and Officer Conley as a reasonable police officer who was simply doing his job in the face of danger. And he was in danger that night. just like every other police officer on every beat in every city in the United States. But police officers are trained to know when that danger reaches a certain level, when they're supposed to act and use their weapon, and when they're not, when they're supposed to wait that extra moment. Officer Conmee didn't wait that extra moment on January 2nd, 2005. If he had, he would have seen that Max Jeffries was not armed. Today, as we listen to testimony, I ask that you consider the evidence presented before you, but I also ask that you put yourself in the shoes of Max Jeffries. If you were him, wouldn't you wish that Officer Conmee had waited that extra moment?
Okay, defense, your opening statement.
May it please the court. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the defense, I would like to thank you all for your sacrifice in coming here today and for taking the time out of your busy lives at home to hear the facts of this case so that justice may be served. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a case about the importance of a safe community and of the recognition of the dedication and danger faced by those who risk their lives to keep our community safe. Day in and day out, the men and women of the Polk County Police Department place their lives on the line and leave the comforts of their own home, not being able to say for sure whether they will return at the end of the day. A police officer has no idea whether the person he or she just pulled over for something as innocuous as running a stop sign will attempt to take that officer's life. As such, a police officer needs to always be on notice for his life every moment that he is carrying a badge and a gun. And we as a community must allow them to protect themselves in order for them to protect us today and tomorrow. You are here because a young man, the plaintiff, Mr. Max Jeffries, along with one of his friends, made a terrible choice. You will hear that on the afternoon of January 2nd, 2005, the plaintiff, Max Jeffries, met with Tony Smith at a previously agreed upon time. You will hear from Tony Smith, the plaintiff's own friend and accomplice, that they together planned an armed robbery, coordinated who would have the weapon, when to meet, and even how they were going to spend the money that they illegally tried to obtain. You will hear how the plaintiff stuffed the money into a brown paper bag and stuffed it down his pants, and how he and his friend ran off in a desperate attempt to escape the consequences. The evidence will show that in his desperate attempt to escape, the plaintiff, Max Jeffries, who had been trying to climb over a barbed wire fence, was spotted by an off-duty police officer, Jamie Conley, who, in full uniform and with police lights and sirens blaring on his police cruiser, commanded Max Jeffries to immediately come down. But Mr. Jeffries ignored these commands and forced the police officer to repeat himself yet again. He placed himself in immense danger. After the commands were given a second time, the evidence will show, and you will hear the lead crime scene investigator, Trinidad Martinez, testify that Jeffries turned his body suddenly towards the police officer and reached for his belt in a sudden motion. This action, sadly, no matter how you spin it, puts forth an immediate, serious, and imminent life-threatening danger towards any police officer, especially one answering the call to a robbery. Jamie Conley then, following the training he had received as a police officer, fired a single, aimed shot into the right arm of the suspect in front of him to disarm him in order to protect the police officer's own life and well-being. The plaintiffs believe that this is evidence of a wrongful shooting. As you have just heard from them, they will try to argue that there were policies and procedures which were not followed, and they're going to try to present complicated and convoluted information regarding a mental disorder which is, to this day, still being studied and is largely misunderstood. In fact, you will hear how their own doctor was unwilling to diagnose Officer Conley because of how unsure she was. They will try to allege that the defendant, the Polk County Police Department, knew that Officer Conley would shoot the suspect, ignored it, and that this fact somehow directly forced Officer Conley to shoot him. However, this case is much simpler than that. This case, in fact, is very easily discerned. The decision we are asking you to make here, the decision you have been asked to come down here for, is whether the guidelines and policies of the defendant, the Polk County Police Department, directly force a police officer to wrongfully shoot a robbery suspect trying to escape. What happened to Max Jeffries is a terrible tragedy that no one should ever have to experience. It is saddening for me to hear the pain that Max Jeffries' parents, family, and friends must be going through right now. However, the question remains, It is the tragedy directly the fault of the Polk County Police Department. Remember that this is a civil case, and that the plaintiffs, the Jeffreys, have the burden to prove to you that Officer Comey was wrong to have shot when he did. The plaintiff must, by law, convince you that Comey should have known that Max Jeffries might have been reaching for something else than the weapon he had just committed a robbery with. Then they must convince you that the defendant, the Polk County Police Department, must have reasonably known that Officer Comey would have shot when he did, and that allowing him to continue with his job protecting the community inevitably forced him to commit a wrongful shooting. Now let's be clear about the facts. Max Jeffries was trying to escape a robbery he had just committed. In fact, he was so desperate in his attempt that he was willing to climb a 10-foot fence and wrestle with the rusty and sharp barbed wire at the top in order to escape the consequences of his terrible decision. You will hear how Officer Comey yelled at him loud enough for a bartender, Mr. Pat Cross, who was across the street, to hear him. He commanded him to immediately cease and desist. And when the suspect, Max Jeffries, ignored him, Officer Comey asked him again. It is here that Max Jeffries, before telling his accomplice, Tony Smith, "Don't worry," turned suddenly towards the police officer and reached for his waist, where his black metallic cell phone was clipped onto his belt. Officer Comey, upon seeing this, made the calculated and trained decision, as would have any other reasonable officer in his position, to disarm the suspect as he feared for his life. Now ask yourself, what would you have done? Do you really think that Officer Comey should have, or even could have, paused and waited to see if what came out of the belt clip actually was a gun? Do you really think that Officer Comey should have waited to be staring down the barrel of a desperate man's gun before making a decision on whether to protect himself or not? I don't think so. And neither does the defendant. Nor did Officer Comey. Members of the jury, at the end of this trial, you won't think so either. You will have heard all the evidence and testimony that you need in order to return the verdict that says, we, the jury, find in favor of the defendant and clear the Polk County Police Department of all wrongdoing in this matter. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Plaintiff, be ready to call your first witness.
Yes, Your Honor. At this time, the plaintiff would like to call Sergeant Sam Sachs. Good morning, Ms. Sachs.
Good morning.
Would you please say your name for the court?
My name is Samantha Sachs. The last name is S-A-C-H-S.
And why are you here today?
I'm here to discuss my previous employment with the Polk County Police Department.
How long have you been working in law enforcement?
I've been working as a cop for about 22 years. I started in the beat in Baltimore. I made my way to sergeant, made my way through lieutenant before I became a special officer with the Internal Affairs Department in Baltimore County.
Can you please describe your work with the Baltimore Internal Affairs Department?
When I worked with the IAD in Baltimore, I found it's a lot harder to investigate cops than it is to investigate civilians. These are the people enforcing the law. And I just came to understand that if you're going to enforce it, you have to follow it. And you must be punished if you don't.
Why did you leave the Baltimore IAD?
I resigned from the Baltimore IAD after taking money from an evidence locker. My spouse, my husband, was in grave danger of dying, and which is why I took it. I don't think that that makes it right. It was the biggest mistake I've ever committed in my life. He did die, and I couldn't live with myself as a dirty cop and a liar. So I came forward, and after that I vowed that I would never put myself in that position again, and I would try to help officers not to do the same either.
I'd like to turn the court's attention to your work in Polk County. First of all, what brought you to Polk County?
Well, after my husband died, my father died, and my dear Aunt Bessie fell gravely ill, and she lives here in Polk County. So I came to take care of her. And before she died, I met with Julian Polson, the chief of police with the Polk County Police Department, and he named me the head of his Internal Affairs Division.
Do you know why the position was open?
I actually found out I was the 6th person to tenure as the head of IAD under Chief Polson for 10 years. The other person, I believe, was left under duress.
Objection and speculation. So why the other officer was let go?
Your Honor, this is her job. I didn't think that within the police department she would know, or want to know at least, why the other person was gone and would have asked.
That information is not always given to the new agent that takes the position. They don't give previous information on previous employees.
I'm going to sustain the objection. Counsel, if you want to lay foundation that she was aware of why the other officer left, you can do that, but so far you're going to lay that foundation. So, sustained and stricken.
When were you hired at the PCPD?
I was hired April 1st, April Fool's 2004.
And when did your employment with the PCPD end?
I was fired on December 21st. Merry Christmas to me, 2004. I was fired because Chief Polson claimed that he received a report that I accepted a bribe from another cop to look the other way on an incident.
Did you actually do this?
No, I did not.
And was this report ever investigated?
To my knowledge, it was never investigated, but I was still fired.
I want to turn the court's attention to your work within the PCPD. What was it like being the head of the IAD there?
Being the head of IAD was a lot different than working in IAD in Baltimore. I never felt that my position, my work, my authority was ever taken seriously by my boss, Polson.
Excuse me. Why do you feel that Chief Polson didn't take your work seriously?
Let me just paint a picture for you. Early in April, I just started, and it's my first attempt to ever investigate an incident report about an officer. And when I wanted the officer to come in and begin my investigation with him, Polson comes into my office and begins lecturing me. And he says to me, he says...
Objection. Hearsay.
As part of your opponent, Chief Polson?
Any response? No. Okay, I'll overlook.
He says to me, we don't investigate our own. And he continues to lecture me and basically says if I ever want to investigate a cop, I have to go through him first. And boy, did he mean it. Anytime I received an incident report, I did have to file a request to investigate with Polson, and all of those requests were denied or ignored.
Would you recognize one of these requests in court today?
Yes, keeping a record, keeping a file, keeping copies is part of my regular business as head of IAD with the PCPD.
Okay, may the record show that I'm approaching the opposing counsel, and then this. May I approach the witness in the bench?
You may. Thank you.
Could you explain what this document is?
This is a copy of a request for the authorization to begin an investigation into Officer Blau. It was request number 34 that I filed with Chief Polson.
Is this a fair and accurate copy?
Yes.
At this time, Your Honor, I would like to offer what has been this document marked as Plaintiff Exhibit 1 into evidence.
Any objection?
Yes. Objection, Your Honor. This piece of document is not relevant to this case at hand.
Response, counsel.
Is it relevant to the policies and the policy enforcement within the PCPD?
It's not relevant to the fact of police brutality, which is claimed in the plaintiff's case.
Can you explain a bit more, counsel?
Statement withdrawn.
No, you should explain more, counsel.
Okay. So it's not relevant because it does not point specifically to an instance of police brutality, which the plaintiff is basing their whole case off this policy of police brutality and excessive force.
Counsel?
Your Honor, at issue in this trial is not a policy, practice, or custom of inactively supervising and disciplining officers may have caused the shooting of Ms. Jeffries.
Yeah, I'm going to overrule the objection. You may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Please read along silently into the record. Please read along silently as I read into the record the first 3 sentences of the 3rd paragraph. This is the 34th request for authorization to initiate an internal investigation that I have submitted to you. The preceding 33 requests have all been denied or remain unanswered. I urge you to grant this request and to do so quickly. Why do you think that your requests were denied or ignored?
Personally, this is what I think about Polson. He was much too close to the force to be objective. I think he thought of the officers as his...
Objection, Your Honor. Speculation. She doesn't know how close she can't assert and know for sure how close Polson was to these officers, each one individually and as a whole.
Counsel?
The witness is testifying to her own personal knowledge and having been an employee at the PCPD, I think it's reasonable to believe that she would have known about relationships with the chief and his officers.
Final word, counsel?
Your Honor, this witness in particular is biased against Chief Paulson, so she assumes and speculates that Paulson had a relationship with all the other officers.
Okay, so if you believe this witness is biased, you are free to bring that out on cross-examination. For now, I'm going to overrule the objection, but feel free to explore this on cross-examination.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Yeah. Can you tell the court what your responsibilities generally were as head of IAD?
Basically, being the head of IAD, you have to be aware of alleged officer misconduct. Generally, my responsibilities were to receive incident reports that would be filed either by citizens or by other officers, and then to file those reports away, and then submit a written request to Paulson to investigate these incidences.
How are you made aware of incidents that may require investigation?
It usually happens one of two ways. A civilian can submit an incident report to the force about an alleged misconduct that they witnessed themselves. And then the other way is a cop can file an incident report, which he's basically, it's a written record of one cop seeing another cop overstep his authority or allegedly misbehaving.
Are you aware of all the incident reports that are filed with the PCPD?
When I was the head of IAD, I was aware of any official incident report that was filed.
And would you recognize these reports in court today?
I would be able to recognize those.
May the record reflect that I'm approaching opposing counsel to hand in the document, or hand in the documents. Here are 3 incident reports filed. May I approach the witness in the bench? Okay. Here are incident reports. Oh, I'm sorry. This is Mariel. Sorry. Okay. Kim, what are these documents before you?
These are 3 separate officer incident reports involving Jamie Convey.
And are these fair and accurate copies?
All 3 of them are in fact fair and accurate, yes.
At this time, Your Honor, I would like to offer what has previously been marked as Plaintiff Exhibits 2, 3, and 4 into evidence.
Okay, any objection, counsel?
Yes, Your Honor, that is not the plaintiff exhibit list I have been provided with.
Why are you objecting, counsel?
Oh, I'm so sorry.
I object, it's not the exhibit list you've been provided with.
Do you have a copy of the exhibit list, counsel?
We,
Yes.
defense counsel does.
Can I see it, please? I assume this is the exhibit list provided prior to trial?
Yes.
Plaintiff's counsel, is this on the exhibit list?
Yes, all 3 of these are on the exhibits.
Okay, where on your exhibit list? What numbers on your exhibit list? If you need to look at it, you can.
The numbers 11, 12, and 13. Number 11 is the one dated May 17th. Number 12 is dated July 9th. And number 13 is dated November 24th, 2004.
Okay, counsel, do you stand by your objection?
Yes.
Okay, where are these not on the exhibit list?
Excuse me, Your Honor.
Yeah.
Can I have 1 second?
Sure.
Objection withdrawn, Your Honor.
Okay, you may proceed.
What-
And do you have any objections to the admission of these exhibits?
I'm sorry?
Do you have any objections to the admission of these exhibits?
No.
You do not? Okay, proceed.
Thank you,
And
Your
so
Honor.
admitted.
Can you explain what these documents are to the court?
These documents are copies of incident reports that were filed against Jamie Conley on 3 different occasions.
How many complaints are there against Officer Conley?
In the 9 months that I was working with the Polk County Police Department, I received these 3.
I would now like to turn the court's attention to the PCPD's policy regarding officer suspension. Are you aware of the PCPD's written policy on officer suspension?
Yes, I am.
And would you recognize a copy of this policy in court today?
Yes, I would recognize it. I recognize it, 1, because I was the head of IAD, and 2, because generally I was an employee of the Polk County Police Department, and I would think it's everybody's business to be aware of what happens when an officer has a besmirched record and what kind of punishments there so befall.
May the record reflect that I'm reporting opposing counsel and the document. May I approach the bench and
You may.
the witness?
Thank you.
There you are.
Thank you.
Can you explain, or what is this document to the court, please?
These are the grounds and the procedures for officer suspension within the Polk County Police Department.
Is this a fair and accurate copy?
Yes.
At this time, Your Honor, I would like to offer what is previously marked as Plaintiff Exhibit 5 into evidence.
Any objection, counsel?
Your Honor, may we please have the exhibit list, please?
Yes, you may retrieve it.
And counsel, permission to speak to counsel?
Okay.
Objection, motion to dismiss evidence based on improper procedure?
What does that mean, counsel?
Well, the exhibit list for this report isn't listed correctly in the exhibit list that was given to our counsel.
Okay, and what is the
Which is the
inaccuracy?
The inaccuracy is that the exhibits were presented out of order.
I don't think there's any need for the exhibits to be presented in order. Is that the only objection?
Yeah, that's it.
Okay, do you have any objection to the grounds and procedure for officer suspension being admitted otherwise?
No.
Okay, you may proceed, so admitted.
Okay. I would like to read into the record policy number 1000C1, besmirched record. And I quote, an officer must be suspended once 3 reports have been officially filed against him or her. The reports do not have to be of any specific degree or nature. In the event that a total of 3 reports are entered into an officer's file, the officer must be suspended immediately for an indefinite amount of time. The suspension period is to be used by the officer's superiors to review the officer's file and conduct. Ms. Sachs, can you summarize what exactly this means for the court?
Basically, this means if any officer at any time receives 3 incident reports in his record, he must be immediately suspended, no matter what he did, no matter what the incidents relate to.
And was Officer Conley ever suspended for his incident reports?
Jamie Conley was never suspended, even after the 3rd was filed.
Thank you, Ms. Sachs. No more questions, Your Honor.
Any cross?
How are you doing, Ms. Sachs?
I'm well, how are you?
I'm fine. So, you just testified that Jamie Conley had 3 incident reports, correct?
Yes, I was aware of 3 incident reports in his file.
Are you absolutely certain of that fact?
I have them right here in front of me, yeah.
And were all of those incident reports investigated and made official?
None of them were investigated. They were all officially filed. Polson didn't, not to my knowledge, allow me to investigate any of these incidents.
I'd like to turn your attention now to your employment in Baltimore. The head of IAD criticized you for being overzealous. Is that right, Mrs. Sachs?
Yes, when I was young in IAD, I was a bit overzealous.
Is it also true that you once charged officers for jaywalking and spitting on the sidewalk?
I did recommend a 90-day suspension, especially for the jaywalking. If he had entered into the street and a car hit him, probably the Baltimore police would be in a similar position that the Polk County is in today.
But isn't it also true that the head dismissed their claims and deemed them as frivolous?
He did. The head of IAD did not think that they were appropriate, so he dismissed them. I wasn't in charge there.
Okay, now I'd like to turn your attention to the incident that transpired in February 2004 when you claimed that you took some money from Baltimore. So were you given any type of permission from any supervisor to take the money from the evidence locker?
No, I did take it, and it was a huge mistake.
Isn't it a violation of police and sergeant officers' conduct to take the money from the evidence locker without permission?
Stealing is a crime, and I was punished. I was essentially fired.
You weren't, isn't it true that you resigned and didn't receive any discipline at all from the Baltimore County Police Department?
I did resign, and I thought losing my job there was punishment enough, but it wasn't my decision not to punish me.
Okay, so when you left Baltimore and came to Polk County, did you let Chief Paulson know of this incident that happened in Baltimore upon receiving the job?
No, neither of us discussed it.
And why not?
Well, I didn't bring it up. It's not a really good interview tactic. I don't know if Paulson was aware of it.
Okay. Isn't it correct that all incidents, you testified earlier that all incident reports go through you review all of them?
When I was the head of IAD, all official incident reports did come through my office.
Okay. And through your review of these incident reports, were there any incident reports of Officer Corey Drake or any other officers?
Yes.
Objection relevant, Your Honor?
This is relevant because it shows that the witness is more probable to, the witness is more probable to see, This is relevant because the incident reports goes through all of the IAD agents, and if she's testifying to the credibility and she's testifying to the Jamie Comey receiving 3 incident reports, it's also relevant to show that Corey Drake and other officers also have incident reports that she has reviewed.
So why are other officers' incident reports relevant to this case?
They're relevant because if the plaintiffs are trying to show this system of police brutality or this policy, then it's important to expand it to more than just one officer.
Your Honor, Corey Drake is not a party or part of this trial.
Mm-hmm. Was he a member of the Polk County Police Department?
Yes, please.
I'm going to allow it.
Thank you, Your Honor. Motion to strike.
You don't want to strike. Yeah, you like this.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, could you just repeat your question real fast?
Yes. During your review of these incident reports, how many incident reports have you seen from Corey Drake?
I had about 2 on file for Corey Drake, and neither of those were investigated either.
Isn't it true that a 3rd report from Jamie Comey was also in process?
If it was in process, I don't know. What I had on file was 2 for Drake. And if there was a 3rd one that happened to be that was going to be processed, then Drake should have been suspended as well.
Second to confer with counsel, please, Your Honor. So you're saying, Mrs. Sachs, that if Drake would have received a 3rd incident report, he would have been suspended?
According to policy, he should
Yes.
have been suspended.
Yes.
If he would have been,
That's the
I have
question.
no
Okay.
idea.
I'm not asking you perspective.
Yes,
Okay,
3
thank you.
stipulate suspension for every officer.
Dispense first.
Okay, any redirect?
Not the second.
Okay, so we just step down. I understand
I'm
this
just
is
gonna run
now
it
playing,
over.
okay, so I think we're going to just take a 2-minute recess. Some form of counsel should go up and make 2 copies of the exhibit list. You can do it at the JLS office,
Do
second floor
downstairs,
board.
something?
Or you can make it free.
I defended and plaintiff exhibit list if you guys would like
Yes,
it.
someone please, so someone, you guys do not have a plaintiff list, so someone on your team, please go up to
Yeah, I have
JLS.
it on.
Make, yeah, and you can send one of your witnesses.
Okay.
You just tell Anna
Does
at the
someone
front
wanna
desk
pause
that
the
you need
tape?
copies. Oh,
Permission to confer or approach the bench for sidebar?
no, not while court is at 7.
Communications.
That's just a quick question.
No, not while court is at 7.
Oh, Officer Corey Gray. Yes, and permission
I'm sorry? Yes, you may do so.
to please state your name and spell it for the court.
My name's Corey Drake, D-R-A-K-E.
And thank you, Officer Drake. And what do you do for work?
I'm a cop. I'm a cop with the Polk County Police Department in Midlands.
And how long have you been employed as an officer with the Polk County Police Department?
I've been on the beat for about 6 years.
And when you first started at the PCPD, or Polk County Police Department, hereafter known as PCPD, who was assigned to be your partner?
Jamie Conley was my first partner.
And how did you feel about Jamie?
You know, I really liked Jamie when we first started. But after a few years, things really changed with him.
What do you feel precipitated?
Objection. Relevance, I don't see what her opinion of Jamie Conley has anything to do with the case at hand.
This goes to her perception of her partner, Officer Jamie Conley, and his mental state, which is tantamount to whether or not he was acting reasonably or even should have been employed on the force.
Your Honor, Officer Drake is not in any way authorized to make any sort of characterization on the mental state of Jamie Conley. Furthermore, I believe that his characterization of Jamie Conley is attacking Jamie Conley's character.
Okay. Are you asking this witness to give expert testimony as to mental state?
Not at all. I'm merely asking this witness to give her impression of her own partner's actions and behaviors on the force.
Okay. If the testimony is limited to that, it will be permissible. So objection overruled right now. Feel free to renew your objection if you feel that the answers given either take the form of expert testimony or amount to impermissible character.
I would like to make a motion to strike the witness's previous answer to the question.
No,
Insofar
not
as
yet.
it characterizes Jamie Conley,
All she has said so far is that he really changed. If we get to the point where you feel like impermissible character evidence is being offered, feel free to renew your objection.
thank you, Your Honor.
Okay? All right, so overruled.
All right, Officer Drake, what do you feel precipitated this change in your partner?
You know, it's no secret. If you get shot on the job, it's not good. And there was one night when Jamie and I were on the patrol. It was a quiet night. We weren't really expecting anything too exciting. But we drove up the patrol car to 3 people. And we got out of the car. And Jamie went up to this young girl, 13, 14, 15, laying on the ground. And he says, "Are you okay?" "Well, whole police procedure." When she jumps up and she shoots him in the torso. And he drops like a sack of potatoes. And he just lay there in his own blood.
And what changes in his demeanor did you notice after this incident?
You know, afterwards, I watched him. You know, he seemed a little too antsy to cuff and bring somebody in, you know. I thought, you know, I saw Jamie looking at people, and if they looked suspicious, they was guilty.
Also, objection, hearsay, and speculative.
Okay, let's break it down. What is your hearsay objection?
Hearsay objection is something, this is not a court statement being brought to evidence, and it's speculative as to
What
the
was the
statement.
out-of-court statement?
That I would like to withdraw my objection for hearsay and
Okay.
put forth an objection for speculation.
Okay, and what is your objection for speculation?
The witness is speaking to the state of mind of Officer Conley when he was making the arrests.
And I don't think that the witness was speaking to his state of mind, merely to actions and behaviors that she witnessed in her partner.
If I may, the witness cannot know the Officer Conley's state of mind when making the actions. The only thing that she can know is the actions that were actually committed.
Obviously, she can't know what is going on in his mind. However, she can witness a pattern and practice of events under Rule 406 that give her an impression of the change in her partner.
Okay, I'm going to sustain the objection and strike the answer from the record. However, you are free to rephrase the question so that the question and answer elicit the type of information permitted in 406.
Thank you, Your Honor.
You're welcome.
Good. I'm going to move backwards. Where did the shooting take place?
Jamie got shot in the alleyway between Daniel's Sports Supply and Pets R Us. It was the same place that we had later shot Max Jeffries.
And after this incident, what changes in your partner's
Objection,
action?
Your Honor. This assumes facts, not evidence. There is no evidence to state. There's no evidence put into the record that states that the shooting took place. The first shooting of Officer Akami took place at the same location as the shooting that took place with Max Jeffries.
Is that your testimony?
That's what I just said.
She just put it into the record.
And I'm saying that it assumes facts, not evidence.
Well, she just made it evidence. If you would like to cross on the veracity of that statement, you're free to on cross-examination, so overruled.
After this incident, what changes in your partner's actions and behaviors did you witness?
You know, I just saw Jamie a little too quick to pull the trigger, to use a turn of phrase. There was this one night in the spring, we saw this guy stealing a TV from a local store, and we're sneaking up behind him doing our cop thing, when Jamie just, it looks like he goes berserk, and he starts beating this kid until he's lights out, you know, and that really scared me.
And what did you feel about after this incident? What steps did you take to follow up the slash report?
You know, I felt scared for myself. I felt pretty scared for my partner, and nobody hates a rat more than I do, but I went to Polson and I told him about the beating. Yeah, I don't know, I really thought Polson was gonna have him see a therapist or something. And whether Polson did something or didn't do something, I don't think it helped Jamie at all, because he got 2 more incident reports in his file afterwards.
At this time, I would like to refer to evidence that has been previously marked on this Exhibit 5.
And what is
Defense
this?
Exhibit 5?
Plaintiff's
What is
Exhibit
that?
5.
And what is this?
Polk County Police Department Grant procedure for officer suspension.
Okay, so it's already been admitted?
Yes.
Okay, yes, I have it, thank you.
What is this?
This is a copy of grounds and procedure for officer suspension.
And you're familiar with these grounds and procedures?
You know, I know about them.
And pursuant to Rule 1000C1 of the grounds and procedures for officer suspension, was Officer Conley, after these 3 formal complaints were filed against him, suspended?
You know, he wasn't suspended.
And were you surprised that he wasn't suspended?
To be perfectly honest, I wasn't. There was this one time in the force, I came in before shift, and before shift I'd had a couple beers. I walked in and Polson was pissed. You know, I should have been suspended for that, but instead he just said, go home. No matter how outrageous your behavior seemed to be, all you got was a stern talking to from the chief.
No further questions.
Any cross-examination?
Yes, Your Honor. If I may? So, Officer Drake, you just testified that Chief Polson, as you put it, cut you a little slack. Is that correct?
Yeah, Chief Polson cuts us all some slack sometimes.
And he did so after you showed up drunk for your night shift. Is that correct?
I wouldn't say I was drunk. I'd had a few beers.
Are you allowed to drink before your shift, or are you allowed to have had any alcohol during your shift as a police officer?
Before shift and on shift, there's no alcohol.
And how would you describe the night shift of a beat?
You know, the night shift, you don't know what you're going to get. It's a funny bag. Sometimes it's really dangerous. Sometimes you get shot you weren't expecting to. It's not the most fun job in the world.
So, would it be fair to characterize the night shift as among the more dangerous shifts that you can take on as a police officer?
Definitely, especially if you get, you know, your fate falls you with a rougher neighborhood.
And Chief Polson, all he did was send you home that night, is that right?
Yeah, he said, don't do it again, and he sent me home.
And when was your next assigned shift?
Honestly, I don't
Objection
recall.
relevance?
I'm speaking to how, or where I'm going with this line of questioning is whether...
Would you like to make an offer of proof?
Yes, I'd like to make an offer of proof that this line of questioning is going to lead to Polson's ability to determine whether or not to suspend a police officer based on his own pursuant to the rules of policy and procedure.
Objection.
Proceed.
What was your next assigned shift?
Honestly, counsel, at this point, I don't really remember.
Is it safe to say that it would have been the next day?
If I had been scheduled for the next day, I assume I would have gone in, but I can't testify truthfully if I came in the next day. I don't remember.
So you're not sure if you came in the next day for your next shift?
No, it was a couple years ago. I've been a cop for 6 years.
And yet you remember the incident specifically that happened the night before, but you don't remember the next day?
Of course I remember getting reamed out by my boss.
Assuming you had a next shift, considering you're still employed,
Yeah,
would you say it's safe to say that you showed up for that shift?
I did show up for that
Would you
shift.
say it's safe to say that you showed up for that shift sober and ready to perform in accordance with all the policies and procedures of the police officer's duty?
Shirt tucked in, all's ready to go.
And during that shift, would you say it's safe to say that you made any arrests or gave out any tickets or helped out any citizens who needed helping during that shift?
I did my police duty.
And had the chief suspended you that night, as was departmental policy, those arrests would not have been made, and those tickets would not have been written, and those citizens would not have been helped. Is that correct?
Well, I'm not the
Calls for
only
speculation.
I'm calling to the witness's previous testimony that she did help those citizens, and she did personally help those specific, and she did specifically pull over those people, and she did specifically write those tickets. And I'm saying that if she had not done so, or that she had not showed up for the shift, if she was suspended, those specific incidents, those specific tickets, and those specific citizens would not have occurred.
Okay, but she has no way of knowing what would have happened had she been on the force. It could have been a totally calm, peaceful night with no incident whatsoever.
I'll rephrase the question.
Okay, sustained, and you may rephrase.
Would you
Went to
yourself?
strike.
Stricken.
Would you yourself have pulled over Would you yourself have made any of those arrests, or would you yourself have written any of those tickets, or would you yourself have helped any of those citizens had you been suspended?
No, somebody else would have done it.
Let's now talk about the incident on January 2nd, 2005. Had you ever met?
Objection, questioning goes beyond the scope of direct.
Your Honor, the witness mentioned that there was the location of the shooting that took place on January 2nd, 2005 was between the alleyways, as she said. Therefore, she brought up the shooting on January 2nd, 2005, and I can ask her about that shooting.
Objection withdrawn.
Had you ever met Max Jeffries before the incident on that day?
I can say for sure, but I don't think so.
You don't think so? Now, regarding the specifics of that day, when you walked over to where Max Jeffries was laying, did you interact with the crime scene in any way?
No, I didn't. I looked at the crime scene. I didn't do anything to it. You know, that's for the CSI guys.
And did you remove any evidence from the crime scene?
No, I did not.
You were absolutely sure that you did not take anything from the crime scene.
I didn't take anything from any crime scene.
Why not?
Because that's against police procedure. That would have completely tampered the evidence. Why would I have ever done that?
And once the paramedics arrived that day, you walked Jimmy back to his car, correct?
I did.
And you placed him in the car, is that correct?
I took him in the car, and you know, he said something really weird to me that night. He looks me in the eyes and he says, "Who am I, Corey?"
And how did you respond to that?
I said, "I don't know."
Your Honor, just
Objection, calls for hearsay.
Okay, so the question called for hearsay, but the question's already out, so are you objecting to
Moving
the...
to strike her
Entire
response.
Okay, so you're moving to strike her
Her
response.
response, I don't know.
I'll rephrase the question.
Okay, so, let's slow down here. You're only moving to strike the responses.
To the most recent question.
Okay,
Only the most recent question.
okay. And your responses you're going to rephrase?
Could you read back the record as to which question or which response to which question you were moving to strike?
I don't know.
All right, the question was, how did you respond to that statement? The answer was, I don't know. Move to strike question and answer.
Okay. In response, counsel?
May I confer with my
You may.
co-counsel? Your Honor, the statement that is in question was made by the witness, and therefore is not hearsay.
It would sit out of court statements.
Your Honor,
It's still
it's
hearsay.
not.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Okay, sustained and strict.
You testified that Conley beat a kid into a coma. Isn't it true that Conley told the chief that you did it?
Yeah, he did say that.
Objection. Calls for hearsay.
That's fine.
Your Honor, I'm only trying to qualify the previous statement and the direct examination regarding this incident in order to make sure that the record clearly reflects the entirety of the events that day.
Your Honor,
What's your
if-
response to the hearsay objection?
It's a party opponent.
Your Honor, Officer Conley is not a party opponent.
Drawn.
Move to strike.
Officer Drake, you testified earlier that the location of the shooting, of the Max Jeffrey shooting, was the same location that Officer Conley was shot at by the incident you described with the three people.
Yeah, I believe it was in that same alleyway with Daniel's Sports Supply in the pet store.
Second, just grab some testimony. Your Honor, may I, let the record reflect that I'm handing opposing counsel affidavit Corey Drake. Let the As previously discussed,
Thank
the
you.
printing of this was
Yes,
a little
not a
bit
problem.
sketchy, I apologize.
Not a
Let the record reflect that I'm handing the witness a copy of his affidavit as well. I would like you to,
You know, this isn't a fair and accurate representation of my affidavit. This isn't
He
even
did,
all
yeah.
of it.
You did not get them correct. The end is printed on the second page next to where it
Our
says.
witness cannot.
I'm sorry, the printing of this was not properly done.
Right, so I'm fine with crossing out this segment. Do you have her signature page?
I
Yes, I do.
have it right here. You know, I
Okay,
have
do you
it.
now have the full thing?
Yeah.
Is this a fair and authentic copy?
Let me just, sorry, just one. Yeah, this is it.
Oh, wait, it's just yours. Wait, no.
I have the rest of it.
Do you have a fair and accurate copy of your affidavit?
Yeah, I've got one right in front of me, yeah.
Okay, you may proceed.
Now, where in your affidavit does it say that you were present? Oh, I'm sorry. At this point, I would like to move defense exhibit previously marked as defense exhibit number 2 into evidence.
Any objection?
Is this number 2?
Yes.
Well, she does. So, no objection.
Counsel, you're attempting to admit this statement into evidence? Is that what you're trying to do, or are you attempting to impeach the witness?
I'm attempting to impeach the witness.
Okay, the court will not permit this to be entered into evidence because it is blatant hearsay. However, you may use it to impeach the witness if you would like.
Mr. Drake, could you point out to me anywhere in your affidavit where it says you were present for when Officer Conley was shot?
Objection, improper impeachment. The witness has testified that she was with Officer Conley the night that he got shot. Whether or not that is true is up to the jury to decide her credibility.
No, so if the witness has a prior inconsistent statement in her affidavit, counsel is free to elicit that on cross.
Nowhere in the affidavit does it say that she was not.
Well, that's
And that is
what
exactly my
counsel's trying
point,
to elicit.
counsel.
Yeah, so you're gonna let counsel do that on cross. Okay, so overruled.
Could you point out to me anywhere in your affidavit where it says that you were present with Officer Conley during the shooting?
When he was shot or when he shot?
When he was shot?
I didn't put it in my affidavit. I can't put everything we did together in there.
Why didn't you put it in your affidavit?
I don't know, I already talked about him beating the shit out of some kid.
But you said that it was after this incident that you noticed the changes in Officer Conley. Don't you think it would have been important to include that in your affidavit if that is the exact moment in which he started changing? Yes or no, please?
Sure, it's important.
So, if it's important to know when it is that Officer Conley started experiencing the changes that you say he allegedly experienced, and you did not include this in the affidavit, you didn't think it was important enough to include it in the affidavit?
Not at the time, I didn't.
So what changed that you thought it was important to testify to today?
Because Jamie killed himself.
You knew he killed, Your Honor, give me a moment, please, Your Honor.
I will.
Thank you. I'd like to refer to you to the last page of your statement where it says your signature.
Yeah.
Could you read to me the date?
Objection, that's evidence rule, we do not have that.
Who witnessed this?
It's there. Just. Could you read to me the date at which you signed, subscribed, and sworn your statement?
It was the dated 17th day of May, 2005.
And was this after Officer Conley killed himself?
It was.
So nothing has changed between that time and now.
No, if you want to be nitpicky
That's it,
about
thank
it,
you.
no.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Any redraft?
Yes. Officer Drake, were you Officer Conley's partner on the night that he was shot?
I was his partner.
Were you present when he got shot?
I was there.
No further questions.
Quick recross, Your Honor.
Sure.
You were present when he got shot, and you've testified that it is at this point at which you noticed a change in Officer Conley's action that led to his suicide, as you testified. Is that correct?
It's
Yes or
what
no, please?
It's what I believe, yes.
Thank you. And yet, you still didn't find that important to put in the
I
affidavit.
brought-
Objection, improper impeachment.
All
What?
right, let counsel finish the question. What was the question?
You still did not find. Sorry.
I think your question's fine. I just wanted to hear the whole thing.
You still didn't find that it was important to include it in your affidavit.
As I've already told you, I didn't put it in my affidavit.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Okay. All right, the witness may step down.
Thank you.
Okay. Clerk, you may call your next witness.
This time we would like to call Dr. Dana Haskins to the stand.
Okay.
Ms. proceed.
Please go ahead.
Please state your name and spelling for the court.
Dana Haskins, Haskins.
What is your profession, Ms. Haskins?
I'm a clinical psychologist with Polk County.
And how long have you been working in the mental health field?
Approximately 12 years,
How long have you been a practicing psychologist?
about a year and a half.
Do you have any previous experience working with people with mental disabilities?
Yes, I worked for about 10 years at a mental health institute as a nurse in Tennessee.
Can you explain for the court the steps you took to gain your qualifications as a clinical psychologist?
Yes, I attended graduate school at Midland State University. I received my PhD in clinical psychology in 2004, after which I commenced a year-long internship under Dr. Dana Clark at Polk County, during which she taught me everything she knew and mentored me. So when I passed my evaluation for the physical practice of psychology, she retired and I became chief resident psychologist.
Your Honor, at this time I'd like to motion to admit Dr. Haskins as an expert in clinical psychology.
Any objection?
No objection, Your Honor.
So moved.
What are your duties as the resident psychologist for Polk County?
I assess, diagnose, and treat any county employee who in need of mental treatment.
And who are your most common patients?
Among others, postal workers, public defenders, and police officers.
In your professional opinion, how would you compare the police officers that you treated to other individuals that you treated in other professions?
Police officers are subject to a unique position where they are put between helping others and protecting themselves. So I think that this can create a very complex mental state because of the dangerous and difficult and depressing job that they are subject to.
Are you familiar with the eligibility requirements of the Polk County Police Department?
Yes, I am.
Permission to approach opposing counsel?
Mm-hmm.
Permission to approach the bench?
Mm-hmm.
And permission to approach the witness? Let the record reflect that I'm distributing a copy of the Polk County Police Department eligibility requirements. Dr. Haskins, could you please explain your role in the eligibility requirements for the Polk County Police Department?
Yes, as it says in section 103, mental requirements, any officer must be examined and deemed mentally healthy by the county psychologist, which is me, before entering the force, as well as every year subsequent to the officer's initiation. And part B is an officer must be able to meet these requirements at all times.
Your Honor, at this time, I'd like to admit this as Exhibit 6 for the plaintiff.
Any objections?
No objection, Your Honor.
Was Jamie Conley a patient of yours?
Yes, he was.
And when did he become a patient of yours?
In June 2004, after he was accused of beating someone into a coma.
During your treatment of Jamie and the conversations you had, did he ever discuss his job performance with you?
Yes, he did. He stated that he occasionally felt overwhelmed with feelings of disgust towards criminals, and which would cause him to act suddenly. He felt like he was reliving the past.
And when you talk about the past, what are you referring to?
Jamie was shot on the job about 2 years ago.
As we learned in Corey Drake's testimony earlier, the shooting occurred in the same alley as where Officer Drake was shot a few years prior.
Yes, it did.
In your professional opinion, what, if any, effect could this have had on Officer Conley at the time of Jeffrey's shooting?
Objection, speculation.
Your Honor, the witness has already been qualified as an expert, thus she's qualified to speak to the mental effect of the experience her patient was having at the time.
Your Honor, she only worked with Officer Conley one time after the incident and only spoke about the incident that fell on January 2nd, 2005 one time. It doesn't necessarily give her enough information to be able to speculate. An expert witness is allowed to speculate on correct data and data that she has acquired through a process that's accurate. One meeting does not seem to me to be fair and accurate data.
Your Honor, at the time, we're not disputing that the witness only met with Officer Conley once after the shooting. However, as a mental health professional and as as Officer Conley's psychologist, she can speak to the effect of being in the same location at the time.
Yeah, I'm going to overrule the objection, but counsel, you're free to explore this on cross.
Yeah. Thank you, Your Honor.
Would you like for me to restate the question?
Yes, please.
As we learned in Corey Drake's testimony, the shooting of Max Jeffries occurred in the same alley as where Officer Conley was shot a few years prior. In your professional opinion, what, if any, effect could this have had on Officer Conley at the time?
I think that this could have been extremely triggering, the similarities of the locations on anyone who had been exposed to a traumatic situation.
Were you ever able to definitively determine if Officer Conley had any type of mental disorder?
No, I was not. I did not believe I had enough individual one-on-one time with him to definitively diagnose him, although he did show some symptoms that I had identified as PTSD symptoms.
And could you please tell the court what PTSD is?
Oh, I'm sorry, post-traumatic stress disorder.
Thank you. Permission to approach opposing counsel? Permission to approach the bench. And permission to approach the witness. Let the record reflect that I'm distributing a copy of correspondence between the witness and Chief Julian Polson. After treating Jamie, did you make any recommendations for him?
Yes, I did. I recommended to Chief Polson that he take a leave of absence so I could spend one-on-one time with him in order to be able to definitively diagnose him.
The evidence was, this recommendation has never been submitted into evidence.
Right. Yes, sustained.
Motion to strike.
Motion to strike.
Granted.
Dr. Haskins, is it part of your normal business practice to conduct correspondence and make recommendations for the officers that you treat?
Yes, it is. As I said before, part of my job is to recommend treatment for various county employees.
Your Honor, at this time, I'd like to motion to admit the correspondence between Dr. Haskins and Chief Polson into evidence.
Any objection?
No objection, Your Honor.
And did you ever make any recommendations for Officer Conco? What was Chief Polson's response to your recommendation?
He told me that my recommendation was absurd.
Objection, hearsay.
This is part of your opponent.
The party opponent exception to the hearsay rule only applies if the party, Chief Polson, was acting under the color of his duties as the chief of police of the Polk County Police Department. She has provided no evidence that during that exact time, Julian Polson was actually serving within his duties as the chief of police. The defendant here is not Chief Polson, it's the Polk County Police Department. Therefore, there's no opposing party.
Your Honor, as Chief of the Police Department, I think that we've already established that Chief Polson is the person who is representing the Polk County Police Department. Also, in the correspondence between the defendant, or between the witness and Chief Polson, she was making a recommendation for an officer who he was in charge of, and his response was to her recommendation, and he was thus serving in his official capacity.
If I may, Your Honor.
This is a closed question, but I think counsel makes a good point that no foundation has been laid that Chief Polson is the party opponent here or acting in a representative capacity. If you want to lay that foundation, you may, but that has not been laid, so sustained.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Dr. Haskins, in your correspondence and your official capacity with the...
Excuse me, motion to strike the
Yes, strike.
statement. Thank you.
In your duties with the Polk County Police Department, could you tell the court who you submit your recommendations to?
I submit my recommendations to the county employee's boss or employer. In this case, it was Chief Julian Polson, who was the chief of the police department.
And in terms of those recommendations, who was in charge of determining whether or not they would be taken heed of?
I believe in the, it would have been Chief Julian Polson.
Okay. So in recommending that Officer Conmee take a leave of absence, what was Chief Polson's response?
He told me that the recommendation was absurd, that he take a leave of absence.
Was Chief Polson's response to your recommendation surprising to you?
No, it was not. The police department had never been very receptive to mental health treatment.
Are you familiar at all with the facts of the incident that occurred on January 2nd, 2005?
Yes, I am. Jamie and I talked about it at our last session.
Objection, doctor-client privilege. The evidence that she's about to state is confidential information provided by Officer Tommy to his psychologist. The psychologist has a duty not to reveal that information based on medical privilege.
I think that's right, but it would be her privilege to waive in concert with her patient. So,
however, there's no evidence, there's no foundation that Officer Tommy ever waived that privilege.
right, but it wouldn't be your objection to make. Point taken, but this would not be your objection to make, so overruled.
Whose objection? Oh, sorry.
Permission to approach counsel, opposing counsel. Permission to approach the bench. And permission to approach the witness.
Yes.
Do you recognize this?
Yes.
Is this your affidavit?
Yes, it is.
Do you testify that all of the information is correct and this is an accurate copy.
Yes. Objection, leading the witness.
Overruled. He's asking foundational questions about it.
At this time, Your Honor, I would like to offer this affidavit as Exhibit 8 into evidence.
Any objection, counsel?
Objection based on the fact that the exhibit list lists the affidavit of Dr. Dana Haskins as number 3, and counsel just said that they were submitting exhibit number 8.
I don't know that the parties were thinking of these numbers matching exhibit numbers, so.
In proper identification of the exhibits, though, it's not fair to opposing counsel to, if they decide to try to submit exhibits that aren't accurately codified during the discovery process when the exhibit lists were.
No, the court's pretrial order was simply that the parties exchanged a list of exhibits they intended to use. There was no requirement that the parties number them at that point or put them in specific orders. Overruled.
However, during
overruled. But do you have any other objection to the introduction of this affidavit as evidence?
Objection, hearsay?
Yeah, response, counsel.
Your Honor, the statements made to the witness by Officer Conmee go to his state of mind and also our record of his medical treatment and diagnosis.
So you're attempting to admit the statements of Officer Conmee in Dr. Haskins' affidavit? So we've got a double hearsay problem, actually. Is there an exception for each level of hearsay?
The medical record for Officer Conmee and the statements made to the witness.
So statements made for the purposes of medical diagnosis. Okay.
And can I confirm with counsel? Your Honor, motion stricken to admit this affidavit into evidence.
So you no longer wish to enter this affidavit?
No, however, I will ask about statements made within the affidavit.
Okay, we can deal with that as it comes up. So your objection is sustained, and the affidavit of Dr. Haskins will not be considered admitted into evidence.
Thank you, Your Honor.
What did Jamie tell you about the incident that occurred on January 2nd, 2005?
Objection, hearsay.
Medical, it goes to medical treatment.
Your Honor, I don't see how the statements of the actions that Officer Conmee took on one evening necessarily produces any evidence that would go to his medical treatment.
Your Honor, the interactions.
He hasn't, excuse me, if I may continue.
Please do.
There's been no foundation laid to state that the treatment that Dr. Haskins has attempted to offer Officer Conmee is based off of the actions of that evening. So any statements made about the actions of that evening do not correlate to the medical treatment that he pursued under Dr. Haskins.
Your Honor, in the interactions between the witness and Officer Conmee, they engaged in regular discussions about different aspects of his job. It has already been stated for the record that they met after the incident that occurred on January 2nd. Thus, that interaction was in an effort to provide medical treatment for him.
Okay. Are you asking this witness about the statements that the officer made during the course of treatment?
Yes.
Okay. If that is the case, then overruled. If you think that the follow-up questions go beyond that, feel free to renew your objection.
Okay, I would like to object that the statements go to Officer Conmee's character, and that it's an inadmissible character evidence based on. It's inadmissible character evidence because these statements would include feelings that would be representative of the person that does not necessarily, that is more prejudicial than probative.
Your Honor, the statements made to Dr. Haskins go to his state of mind at the time of the shooting and how he felt about the incident that occurred, which is extremely probative in this case.
I'm going to overrule the objection.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Dr. Haskins, what did Officer Conley say about the incident that occurred on January 2nd, 2005 in the session that you had afterwards?
He said, "I wish I hadn't responded to that call. I was off duty. I was just trying to be a good cop, but I should have just gone home. I was just so scared and angry."
In your professional opinion, Dr. Haskins, do you think that in the weeks leading up to the shooting, do you think that Officer Conley would have passed the eligibility requirement, the mental health eligibility requirements that are set by the Polk County Police Department?
No, I do not.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Any cross?
Yes, Your Honor. If I may? Hello, Dr. Haskins. How are you today?
Hello, I'm great.
Now, Dr. Haskins, I want to talk a little briefly about your experience as a licensed psychologist. You received your license to practice psychology in 2004, correct?
Yes.
And Jamie Conley was referred to you in June 2004, correct? So you must have only been practicing psychology as a licensed practitioner for about under 5 months, correct?
Your Honor, objection. It's already been established that the witness was practicing for, asked and answered, it's already been established that the witness was practicing psychology for over a year at the time, or has been practicing for over a year.
Okay, well, this is cross-examination, and she is permitted to dive into the veracity of her previous statements. Overruled.
Thank you. So let me restate my question. You were practicing psychology as a licensed practitioner for fewer than 5 months when Jamie Conley was referred to you, correct?
I guess if I had gotten my degree in January and I started treating him in December, so it would have been over, June, it would have been over 5 months, but yes.
So around 5 months?
Yes.
Okay. Now, I want to dive into a little bit more about your the type of patients that you treat commonly. You testified that one of the most common patients that you treat are police officers, correct?
Yes.
And in your expert opinion, do they exhibit any common feelings such as anger?
No, I wouldn't say that they all experience, or all of the people I've treated state anger as one of their feelings.
Okay. So in your expert opinion, would you say that oftentimes police officers become angry because of the duties of their position?
I wouldn't say oftentimes, but sometimes.
Sometimes. Okay. Thank you. Now, I want to turn your attention to Officer Conley and the anger that you have identified in your previous statements as Officer Conley had. Did Officer Conley exude anger?
In certain instances, I believe he exuded anger, as stated in his statement after the incident in January.
Okay. So he had an anger problem, would you say?
No, I would not say it's an anger problem.
Oh, so you never diagnosed him with an anger management problem?
No, I did not.
No. Okay. So did you ever identify or diagnose him with any other kind of disorder that would relate to his anger?
No.
If I were to come to you as a patient and tell you that sometimes I get angry, would you diagnose me with an anger problem?
It depends on the context in which you get angry.
Okay, depends on the context. Would that be enough for you to write a letter of recommendation that I should not work if I get angry sometimes?
Objection. Relevance. We have not discussed any anger issues at all for Officer Conley.
It's just the state of mind of the police officer.
But they
that was brought up under the direct examination post the incident that they discussed. She stated that the Officer Conley had emotions of anger. This goes directly towards that anger and how she would make recommendations based on anger.
Your Honor, the statement in which Officer Kami stated that he was angry occurred after her recommendation. Also, the fact that he was angry at one specific time does not go to him having an anger management issue.
Well, I think that's what counsel is exploring on cross. So, you know, the jury can decide how much weight to give this testimony, but she's certainly free to explore whether anger was an issue in the course of treatment. So, overruled.
Okay. I would now like to turn our attention to the letter of recommendation that was previously submitted under evidence to Chief Polson, please. Oh, wonderful. Now, Dr. Haskins, did you write this recommendation truthfully?
I did.
And in your recommendation, didn't you state that Officer Kami had anger management issues?
Would you point me to the line, please?
If you read, to assist you in identifying which line I'm referring to, may it please the court that I read it out loud?
If you could just count down which line you're referring to.
It's line 4.
Okay. Okay, now you may read it.
I strongly believe that Officer Kami's anger management issues can be rectified. So would you say that the statement means that you had diagnosed him with some kind of anger management issue?
Okay, yes.
Yes, but wasn't your testimony just now that you had never diagnosed an anger management issue?
Well, I'd written this letter about a year ago.
Answer the question, please. Had you diagnosed Officer Kami with an anger management issue?
Apparently I had, yes.
Apparently you had, but in your testimony, when I asked you, had you identified an anger management disorder in Officer
Judge asked and
Kami?
answered.
Yeah. I think your impeachment's been accomplished. Move on.
All right, thank you. All right, so with this letter of recommendation, you also recommended that Officer Kami be granted a leave of absence to receive necessary treatment, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And may I ask a little bit about your employment status and how you're paid? Now, Dr. Haskins, would it be a fair representation of your psychological field that you are paid per visit?
Objection. This is improper character evidence. Obviously, she works for the county. She is compensated. How is this
It doesn't go
relevant?
to her character. It goes to her work with Officer Kami, which has already been brought up during direct examination, which I'm imploring during my cross.
How is that relevant to how she's compensated?
Her compensation is directly relevant to the recommendation that she made to seek more treatment numbers, which may I make an offer of proof?
Yes.
If allowed to testify, I believe that this witness will state that she made the letter of recommendation requesting further treatment in order to gain more money, because her employment is based off of the number of treatments that she gives. So she would get more money.
Is there
based
any
off
proof of this?
Well, that's what
I'm asking.
Okay.
Well,
Okay, counsel. All objections.
And it goes towards that.
Counsel. All objections and responses should be directed to the bench, not to opposing counsel. You talk to me, you do not talk to each other. Okay. Counsel has made an offer of proof. I'm going to allow some latitude for this line of questioning to continue. So overruled. However, if you will be free to redirect if you think that counsel has not established, or if you think counsel is acting improperly in any way with the subsequent questions. So you're on a short leash, counsel. Okay?
Thank you, Your
All
Honor.
right, go ahead.
My apologies for my prior contact. Now, to refer back to my question, are you paid per treatment?
No.
No? Okay. Are you paid per hour?
No.
How is your salary then defined?
I believe I am paid a salary similarly to the way other county employees would be paid, such as a public defender who does not get paid per case but gets paid a general salary.
Okay, so it wouldn't matter if you were seeing 25 patients in a day or 5 patients in a day.
Right.
Right. Okay. So you don't have any latitude,
Objection, argumentative.
Counsel, this is helping you. I wouldn't.
If you want, you don't have to.
Dr. Haskins, are you being paid to be here right now?
Yes, I believe most experts are paid to be here, to testify in court.
You believe or you know?
I mean, yes, experts are usually paid to be here, so yes, I am being paid.
1 moment to confirm counsel, please. Okay. So you did recommend that Officer Tommy seek more frequent sessions, correct?
Yes, I did.
Okay. And were you had previously testified that you were unable to identify an anger management issue, correct?
I believe I said that earlier in my testimony.
Yes, you did. And your letter of referral does identify some kind of disorder that you were seeking treatment
Yes,
for.
I made a mistake.
You made a mistake. Is it possible that you made a mistake in your diagnosis?
No, I never, in the initial diagnosis, or which
In
diagnosis? are you
the
referring to?
diagnosis of the anger management issue.
No, I do not believe, at the time, I'm sure I had enough information to diagnose him.
But you even stated that you didn't have enough information to create a diagnosis in the first place, correct?
I said, for the, which statement are you referring to?
For the anger management issue, you said that you didn't have enough information to diagnose him with an anger management issue.
That was in the same mistake that I made, that I said I didn't diagnose him.
Okay, so either your testimony now or your letter of referral, in which the chief person denied, was correct.
Well, I have many patients, and in the past year, over a year, I may have forgotten my exact diagnosis, but I'm
Oh, so
telling
you-
you now.
So you're a little overwhelmed by the number of patients that you have, correct?
Objection,
and-
argumentative.
No, I'm
Do you remember every single case and every single detail of every case you've had as a lawyer?
Don't ask questions.
Dr. Haskins, you're the witness, I'm the lawyer. It's my duty to question you, not the other way around. But thank you for your concern. Now,
Okay, Counsel, we've been
Counsel
going
Ross.
a long time here. It's, if you have 1 or 2 wrap-up questions, feel free. But we're going to cut it off after
defense
that.
rests, Your Honor.
The defense reps, okay. Is there any redirect?
Yes, Your Honor.
Go ahead.
Dr. Haskins, in your diagnosis of a possible anger management issue, what was the recommendation? Why did you offer that diagnosis to Chief Olson?
Because I think that his job is extremely stressful, and if there was an anger management problem, which I thought he needed treatment for, then it would be dangerous for him to be out on the streets.
And is there any financial interest for you in the patients that you see, the number or anything of that nature?
Objection leading.
There wasn't leading.
My apologies.
No.
No further questions.
Okay. Any recross? Counsel?
No.
Okay. So we'll just make that down. Okay, plaintiff, do you have any further witnesses?
Your Honor, at this time, we would have liked to have called Officer Conley to the stand, but due to his untimely death, he is no longer available. Before his death, he did make a deposition,
Right.
but we would like to introduce him to evidence and put in some statements in the deposition into the record.
Okay, so you want to read selected statements into the record?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay.
Objection. Based on the opposing counsel just say that they had wished to call